You're listening to the Persistence Mastery Podcast to give your communication skills the clarity edge with your host, Paul Leon.
Hey guys, welcome back. So this episode was birthed out of a pretty strong conversation I had recently. Another professional and I were having a sounding board conversation, I'll call. We were kind of using each other, not as coaching, but just kind of sharing our experiences. That's the thousands of people we've helped. And this episode is really coming from a 10 plus years of experience coaching, helping, achieving career success in the area of sales, as well as training, speaking, presenting, etc. And it also comes from just my perspective, or I say Paul's perspective. And I remember I was looking at this episode in a godlike view, as they call it in project management planning, where you look at it from an arrow. And I was writing on the other side, thinking back to all the people I've coached, helped, and not everybody makes it. And that's kind of a tough thing to always accept sometimes. But as my strengths quest always puts me in, my top 5 always has an includer. I always want people to win. I want people to succeed. And one of the things that's sometimes difficult for me is I don't like to see when somebody doesn't succeed. It's kind of a tough thing for me to watch, but I've learned through constant experience and pounding the pavement in my own training and other work life that I have to just accept that, which really brings me to the first fundamental. So, fundamental number 1 is acceptance. And this is something I struggle with. I like to win. And I'm sure if you're listening to this and you're a person who has goals, like many of us, you may struggle with this too. And I remember that I had a challenge in a career and I had vented for 30 minutes with this person. For 30 minutes, I was in a coaching session. And I have to hand it to this person. They pretty much, through the computer, watched me just kind of go all out explaining the difficulty of the situation. At the end of it, she goes, "You have to learn to master life skills." And I was like, "Excuse me?" And that was a pretty weird response. Typically, if somebody who's coaching you, whether it's an exchange of money, on some level, you think, well, aren't I paying you to agree with me? But that's not always the facts. The fact is, sometimes a good coach, a good manager, leader, etc., knows when to challenge you. And that's not always something you can read in a book that comes from massive experience and helping many people. And she had said, you need to master life skills. And what she was really saying, as she clarified herself further, was, I'm not validating your feelings about the difficulty of the situation. I'm totally there with you. I 100% understand. What you struggle with, though, Paul, is the ability to have acceptance. You have to step back and you have to stay present. And even though you're not winning, you have to look at this and go, okay, I accept the situation for what it is. This is the reality of it. And she goes, and when you can do that, then you can start to plan out and go to the next step, staying present and accepting the reality and challenges of the situation to start keeping your mind mentally tough. The next one is conditional thinking. What do I mean by that? Conditional thinking is, if you do X, Y will happen. And that's not the case with communication skills. That's really not the case with life. What we have to sometimes accept, going back to fundamental 1, is just because you do this ultimate action a certain amount of frequency does not mean you will get a result. I have made 400 phone calls in 1 week, cold calls, as a sales representative, got 1 consultation, and that 1 consultation was a no-show. I have had a month where I did not hit my commissions and I had to do a presentation on why I didn't make it. I had to drive to a corporate office and present to leaders. Those are not really fun experiences. And yet, here's the thing about mental toughness. When you can take fundamental 1, which is acceptance, and take fundamental 2, conditional thinking, and you can start to recognize that those are challenges for you, you can name it, you can claim it. Let me say that again. If you can name it, you can claim it. And that is something I've had to understand about my own professional journey. That just because I do X amount of times, I'm not going to get Y result always. I'm not always going to get the exact result that I was hoping or dreaming or envisioning. And yet, here is the other side of helping you around conditional thinking. If this is something you struggle with, that I've struggled with in my professional career, when it comes to conditional thinking, just because you visioned it a certain way and didn't get it, doesn't mean it's also going to lead to something that's even better. See, I have had certain ideas that when I worked profusely toward them, fought day and night for them, and I didn't get it, it was tough. And I look back now at the 3,000 people I've trained. I look back now at the fact that I've been married over 9 years, 2 kids, etc. And I'm not telling you that to brag. That is not the reason I mentioned those factors. I mentioned those factors just because 10 years ago, I didn't have that vision. I didn't know 100% where I was going to be, but I knew what I wanted. I knew what results I needed to achieve in my career. And I knew that day in and day out, I was going to work for them. And it wasn't a perfect picture. And everything I envisioned didn't come to life. But you know what? What I have today and what I envisioned 10 years ago, maybe they didn't line up, but it's better than I thought it was. And this is something I want to leave you with. This is something a quote from this conversation that I think if you really resonate with it and you really take it to heart today, or when this episode catches your ear, driving, gym, wherever you may be, failure is a rehearsal for success. Let me say that again. Failure is a rehearsal for success.
Thank you for listening to the Persistence Mastery Podcast. Subscribe to where you listen to podcasts. And if you want to hire Paul to train or speak for your team, visit persistencemastery.com and fill out the request training form.